How's it going, guys? Today we're going over chapter 4.1 or module 4.1, solving quadratic equations by taking square roots. Okay, so in order to solve by taking square roots, we have to isolate the term x squared. Just like anything else, if we're solving for a variable, we're going to have to isolate the variable. So we isolate the x squared, and once the x squared term is isolated, we're going to take the square root of each side, and we're going to simplify it. Don't forget to simplify it because that is important. If a solution is a value and its opposite, you can write the solution with a plus or minus. That just needs to be positive or negative. For example, if the solution was 3 and negative 3, we can just write it as plus or minus 3. Save yourself a little time. It's also just a little more proper to write it that way. And when we take the square root of value, we must use the plus or minus. For example, x squared equals 4. That's saying square root of x squared equals square root of 4, which equals x equals plus or minus 2. Because remember, 2, when you multiply two negative numbers, it still gives you a positive number, and we must account for that. So that's why we have to use the plus or minus over here. All right, so let's go ahead and do some examples. Number 1, we're going to solve x squared equals 16. So we have x squared that equals 16. We're going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. We get x equals plus or minus the square root of 16, and the square root of 16 is just 4, so we have plus or minus 4. Because you plug it back in, 4 times 4 is 16, that works. Negative 4 times negative 4 is also 16, that also works, and that's why we have to use the plus or minus, since it has to account for both the positive and the negative answer, sorry. So for number 2, what we're going to do here, first thing we're going to do is isolate the variable. So let's go ahead and add 16 to both sides. We get 2x squared equals 16. We're going to divide by 2 to get the x squared by itself. X squared equals 8. So x squared equals 8. Now we're going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. And we get x equals the square root of 8. And we're not actually finished here. We need to simplify. And if you guys remember prime factorization, where we have that 8 and we made a tree out of it. So 2 factors of 8 is 4 and 2. And 2 factors of 4 is 2 and 2. We see we have a pair of 2's here. So you guys remember, every time we have a pair, you take one of those outside the square root. Everything that's left over stays inside. So we have one pair of 2, so we take 1, 2 out. So we get x equals, forget the plus or minus, don't forget that. It's going to be plus or minus 2. You have 1, 2 that you take outside of the square root, root 2. And that is what our answer for this one is going to be. Let's go ahead and box that x equals plus or minus 4 as well. All right, let's keep going. So we have 3 more problems here. Let's get to it. So negative 5x squared plus 9 equals 0. We're going to minus the 9 on both sides. We get negative 5x squared equals negative 9. Divide by negative 5 on both sides. And we get x squared equals negative 9 divided by negative 5 is positive 9 over 5. And we're going to take the square root of both sides. So we're left with x equals plus or minus root 9 all over root 5. Root 9 simplifies to 3, and root 5 does not simplify to anything else, but we are not actually allowed to have a square root in the bottom or where the denominator is, so we have to get rid of it. All right, and how we do it is we're going to go ahead and multiply what the denominator is by itself. So we have root 5 all over root 5. We can do that since root 5 divided by root 5 is 1. We're not changing the value of the function. But when we do this, we are going to get 3 roots of 5 all over 5. Because root 5 times root 5 gives you root 25, and the square root of 25 is just 5. So this is what our answer is. We get x equals plus or minus, do not forget that, 3 root 5 all over 5. Okay? So let's go ahead and do number 4 now. X squared minus 24 equals 0. We're going to add 24 to both sides. We get x squared equals 24. We're going to take the square root of both sides. X equals the square root of 20, plus or minus the square root of 24. don't forget it. Like I keep forgetting it. It is important. Put the plus or minus. X equals plus or minus square root of 24. We can do a prime factorization of 24 to simplify it some more. So if we make a little tree out of it, we get 24. We use 6 and 4. 3 and 2, and 4 is 2 and 2. We have one pair of 2s. We don't have pairs of anything else. The only thing we take out is 1, 2. So we're left with x equals plus or minus 2. What's left over is 3 and 2, so we multiply those two together, and we get square root of 6. And that's what our answer is going to be for 4. Let me just isolate that a little bit. Okay? So let's go ahead and do number 5 as well. So for number 5, it's negative 4x squared plus 13 equals 0. So we're going to go ahead and isolate the x squared, like we've done before, minus the 13 on both sides. Negative 4x squared equals negative 13. Divide by negative 4 on both sides. And we're left with x squared equals 13 all over 4. Now we're going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. There's a little more room. And we get x equals plus or minus the square root of 13 all over the square root of 4, which simplifies to, so you just go ahead and rewrite it. We can simplify it to x equals plus or minus the square root of 13. Doesn't reduce anymore since 13 is prime. Square root of 4 becomes 2. So we get x equals plus or minus the square root of 13 divided by 2. All right, so we have a couple of new formulas to learn. The first one is the distance fallen at a time t. That's going to be d of t equals 16t squared. Then we also have the height in feet at time t, or how high something is at a certain time. That's going to be h of t equals h of 0, where h of 0 or h sub 0 is the object's initial height, how high it initially is, minus the 16t squared, right? So let's go ahead and do a problem. If you drop a water balloon, how long does it take to fall 4 feet? We're told to use the model d of t equals 16t squared. In this problem, d of t equals 4 because it's the distance is falling is 4 feet. So we know how long it takes it to fall 4 feet. So we get 4 equals 16t squared. We're going to divide by 16, like we always do. We set up our equation with the word problem in mind. Once we've done that, we're just going to solve for t. So isolate the t variable. We get 4 over 16 is 1/4. That equals t squared. So I'm going to rewrite it up here. T squared equals 1/4. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. T squared becomes t. That equals square root of 1 over 4. It's the same thing, square root of 1 all over square root of 4, which equals 1/2. And in this case, we don't actually put plus or minus because we're talking in terms of time. You can't have a negative time. You can't time travel. You can't go backwards. So we just stick with the positive version of it. So the water balloon falls 4 feet in 0.5 seconds or 1/2 second, however you want to see it, however you want to say it. Okay, let's keep going. We have another problem. The rooftop of a five-story building is 50 feet above the ground. How long does it take the water balloon drop from the rooftop to pass by a third-story window at 24 feet? We're going to use the model h of t equals h of 0 minus 16t squared. The height is going to be 24. Remember, we're talking in terms of how high it is at a certain time. It's 24 feet high off the ground, so h of t equals 24. So we're going to plug in everything that we know. I'm going to do my problem at the bottom, give myself a little more room. So h of t is 24, like we said. That equals h sub 0. H sub 0 is the initial height of something. The initial height of the water balloon is 50 feet above the ground because this is the top of the 50-foot building. So it's 50 minus 16t squared. And we're going to do what we always do. Isolate the t squared and solve for t. 24 minus 50 is negative 26. That equals negative 16t squared. Divide by negative 16 on both sides. All right, negative 26 divided by negative 16, that's going to reduce to 13 over 8. The negatives cancel each other out, and we divide the top and the bottom by 2. 26 divided by 2 is 13. 16 divided by 2 is 8. All that equals t squared. So we're going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides, and we get t. I'm just going to flip it over to the left side of square root of 13 all over the square root of 8. We can't have that square root of 8 in the bottom, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply the top and the bottom by square root of 8, and we're left with square root of 8 multiplied by square root of 13 all over square root of 8 times square root of 8 is just 8, because the square root of 8 times the square root of 8 is square root of 64. The square root of 64 is 8. So on the top side here, we need to simplify the sum. The fastest way I see to do it is to leave the square root of 13 alone, since it's already prime and simplified. There's no point messing with it. But I am going to simplify the 8. Like we saw earlier, the square root of 8 simplifies to 2 root 2. If you want to see it really quick, you have 4 and 2, 2 and 2. We get a pair of 2's here, so it goes outside the square root, and the 2 stays over there. So we get 2 root 2 times the root of 13 all over 8. The root 2 and the root 13 can multiply with each other. So we can go ahead and just make it 2 root 26 all over 8. Or this will simplify to 2 to 8 can simplify some more. We can actually end up getting that t equals root 26 all over 4. That's our exact answer. But if we go back to the problem, we can see that we're over on the previous page. Sorry, I'm not going to go there, but it told us to give us an exact answer and an approximate. This is our exact answer. Your approximate answer is what you're going to put into a calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and put the square root of 26 divided by 4. If you don't have a calculator and you're at home, you can use decimals. It's online, it's free, it's easy to use. So go ahead and just use t equals square root of 26 divided by 4. Our approximate of that, when rounded to the 10th variable, gives us 1.3. So it takes about 1.3 seconds for the water balloon to get to the 3rd story. Let's rewrite that. Okay, so once we've done all that, we want to answer in one complete sentence. So what we can't say is that in 1.3 seconds, the water balloon run out of room there, but the water balloon is to pass the 3rd story building, or the 3rd story window. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not an English teacher, so I don't know what correct grammar really is. The 3rd story window. All right, the point of that question is just to make sure you understand what the 1.3 means. It means in 1.3 seconds after the water balloon was dropped, it's going to pass by the 3rd story window. Okay? So let's keep going. The next page over here, we're asked how long does it take a water balloon described in the previous question to hit the ground? Which model are we going to use? Truth be told, you can use either model, but in this problem, I think the easiest one to use is the DFT, because we're asked, it's asking us how long does it take to hit the floor. So we're asked the distance of it being dropped, which is going to be 50. So in my opinion, I think DFT equals 60t squared is going to be the easiest. So the DFT is going to equal to 50 because it's dropped 50 feet. So we get 50 equals 16t squared. Go ahead and solve for t. Divide by 16. 50 divided by 16. Divide the top and the bottom by 2. You get 25 all over 8. That equals t squared. We're going to take the square root of both sides. So let's go ahead and finish up here. Square root of 25 all over the square root of 8. That equals t. Square root of 25 is just 5. Square root of 8, like we saw multiple times, is 2 root 2. But actually, let's backtrack a bit there. It's not actually convert that or simplify it yet, because we still need to get rid of it from the bottom. So we have 5 all over root 8. It's going to multiply the top and bottom by root 8. And that gives us 5 root 8 all over 8. Root 8 reduces, like we saw last few slides, root 8 becomes 2 root 2. So we get 5 multiplied by 2 root 2 all over 8. I'm running out of room here, so I'm going to complete it over here. Right, so from star to star, I'm going to extend it over here. So we have 5 times root 2, 5 times the 2 gives you 10. Root 2 all over 8. The 10 over 8 can reduce, so we can get, divide the top and the bottom by 2. We get 5 root 2 all over 4. This is what our exact answer is, because it's in a decimal and a square root and a fraction. It's going to be our exact answer. And remember, this problem, the previous problem before it, it's always going to be positive. I guess we did square it, so usually you would put a plus or minus, but in the context of both these problems, you cannot have negative time. So we stick with the positive version of it only. Okay, so we have 5 root 2 over 4. That's our exact answer. Let's go ahead and put that into a calculator, see what we get. So 5 times the square root of 2 divided by 4 gives us 1.767. So if we're going to approximate that to the 10th, is going to be about 1.8 seconds. All right, so that's what our approximate time before the water balloon hits the floor from the top of a 50-foot building. Okay, so let's go ahead and answer one complete sentence. I'm going to leave that for you guys to write yourself. I'm not going to write it, but what we want to kind of make you guys think when we're answering that question or asking that question is what that 1.8 means. That 1.8 means is going to take the water balloon 1.8 seconds to go from the top of the building to hit the floor. Okay? I think that's the end of the slides, or end of the notes. Yes, it is. So you guys can go ahead and do the homework, practice some of this if you need to, or whatever you need to do, guys. Good luck.